Welcome back to Beyond the Books. Today I'm joined by Kieran Oldershaw, who works in our property team. Hi Kieran. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Kieran Oldershaw. So I'm our Associate Director in the United Property team. Effectively, we're a team of chartered surveyors and property professionals that offer commercial services to effectively all of our businesses across the UK. So that could be range of professional services in terms of managing property, acquiring sites, disposing of sites, general questions businesses might have on a day-to-day basis around challenges they might face to do with the property they occupy or the property they let out or rent to other businesses.
So I know from a service line perspective for a few of our clients, you've helped source properties, you've helped with lease agreements, capital allowances, dilapidations.
Yeah.
If you want to give us an example of a couple of those that you've worked on recently, just to give the listeners a bit of more in depth of what it is that the service line can do.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess if we're thinking Leicester specific, so our team's a centralised kind of expert service line. So we're based out of Northampton, Leicester, and Milton Keynes, but we operate nationally. So what we do is, if a regional team, such as Leicester, contact us and say they've got a long-standing client that's got a specific need for property advice, we will touch base with the team, we'll go through kind of initial points on what the challenge is, and then basically touch base with the client. So I guess a good example of that in kind of recent times would be your client Zamton Limited. Effectively, they're looking to acquire a site to relocate from their existing location. So they've expanded operations over the last few years. The current location they've been in for the last, let's say, 10 years, and they're effectively outgrowing it. So the question around what can they do with their existing lease that's in place, how they can get out of that, and then how they can acquire a new site to fulfil those operational needs. So effectively work with them, go through what the requirements are for the new sites, and then spend the preceding months looking for new locations, identifying the right site with the clients, negotiating a deal, and then effectively getting the legals all through and hopefully moving them in over the next couple of months.
No, that's great. And I think one client from probably a year or so back, from a dilapidations perspective, what comes to mind is when the expectation there of what they think is dilapidations compared to what the surveyors actually come out with from a landlord's perspective, that you did quite a bit of work for a client of mine at that point, because the gap was so different as to expectations versus reality.
Yeah, I think dilapidations is a really good example of where a business owner, so obviously SMEs that we deal with predominantly in our firm, they don't have a lot of experience dealing with specific transactional property issues. You might have a business owner that, let's say, is family run, they've had a property for the last 20 years, been handed down from their parents, they've never had to negotiate a new lease on their property, they've never had to deal with a lease exit process and what can come with that, and obviously one of those would be around dilapidation. So a lot of the businesses we work with and work for, you could say 50% of them don't know what dilapidations are.
Wow.
Which can be pretty shocking considering the amount of cost that's involved in that. So I guess your client, as an example, would be perfectly clear. They didn't really know what dilapidations were, or if they did, they had an idea of what they thought a sensible number might be to kind of put the property back to a acceptable condition for the landlord. Landlord's view was drastically different. Probably multiply their initial number by about 15. That's where you get to. And then I guess our job is to kind of almost educate the client on what is an acceptable level, and then obviously still try and do a good job of negotiating that down for them. Which can prove difficult from time to time, and that was a challenging one.
What about capital allowances? Because they seem to be cropping up a lot more recently. We seem to be doing a lot more work on those.
Yeah, capital allowances, so I guess anything property tax related is where our kind of team of chartered surveyors can add a lot of value to. So as opposed to your usual kind of firm of chartered surveyors that probably just deal with the kind of standard services in property management, leasing, letting, those kind of services, they probably don't touch on tax related issues that much. beauty of ours is that we obviously work really closely with the tax and accounts teams within TC Group, and we can kind of team up on specific property tax related issues. So capital allowance is a perfect example. Effectively, the capital expenditure a business puts into a property they occupy or own, they can get tax relief on. As simple as that. A lot of businesses aren't necessarily aware of it. If they are aware of it, they might not have had the most detailed advice from, let's say, their kind of existing accountants, and that's where we can add a lot of value to, basically identifying expenditure or items in their property they might have spent within the last few years that have not necessarily been identified and then claimed against. So some cases you could be looking at hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of expenditure that hasn't necessarily been put through to get additional relief on. So yeah, capital allowance is a massive one. Land remediation relief is another one of those more obscure ones where businesses that, let's say a big one nowadays, will be getting rid of any kind of asbestos in the building. If you can remove that and replace it with something that obviously doesn't have any kind of contamination in it, there's big tax reliefs on that as well. So a lot of the time it's actually us proactively identifying that with the teams around TC Group. If there's an opportunity where there's been some kind of capital expenditure, the client's not even aware of it, the accounts teams or the tax teams around the firm will actually contact us ahead of time and say, well, look, I've spent this money, what can we do with it? Part of our service is actually making sure there is eligible expenditure, identifying it, and then going to the client and say, well, look, we've got a big tax saving potential here if you want us to help you identify and put the work in.
That's really interesting, because as well, my next question was what makes your service line different, but focusing on that from a tax related issues rather than just the standard compliance ones. That's where I suppose you would come into your own really with the additional supports.
100%. I mean, we like to be as proactive as possible, but a lot of the time businesses are going to be coming to their advisors when they've got an issue. So when it comes around property, it's probably going to be around the end of a lease, challenges with capacity in a warehouse or an office. A lot of the time it could be unexpected growth in a business, and then the client's looking to expand operations into either a new site or alternative location. That's when they'll come to us and we can offer high level expertise and service, where obviously the accounts teams or tax teams or anyone else around the business won't necessarily be able to advise on that, but we can offer that service under the TC Group umbrella, keep it all in house, and then we can liaise with the teams kind of as and when those costs change, and then they can factor that into the year-end accounts when they come up.
Talking about working collaboratively, and obviously the property service line not only stands within Leicester, Northampton, Milton Keynes, but is covered across the country nationally through TC Group. So how do you work collaboratively with the other offices, and how do you make sure that the clients get the same support end to end?
Okay. Good question. So effectively our team within TC Group is the only kind of team of chartered surveyors or property professionals in the entire UK. So any query that might come from a client all the way from, let's say, Newcastle down to Southampton, will be vetted and then come straight through to us. So we work pretty closely with a lot of the offices around the country. We've either got contact or dealt with the majority of those on a pretty regular basis. Some of the biggest kind of issues we've had recently in terms of supporting businesses would be on business rates. There's been a big change in 2026 with revaluation of all commercial business rates in the UK. So we've been pretty active over the last few months dealing with those changes and putting in challenges for businesses, and that's all across the country basically. So we like to position ourselves centrally in England, but we operate on a national basis, and we're happy to travel and meet up with the teams as and when they need us to, basically.
Going back on that then, looking ahead for 2026, would you say that for any sort of business out there at the moment, rates and revaluations are going to be probably one of their biggest for this year?
I think it's going to have affected pretty much any UK business that either lets or owns commercial property in the UK. So 100%. Business rates is always a big one for us, but especially at the moment, it's probably a bigger concern for some businesses where they've seen rates go up by 20, 30, 40% in areas. So, and that could be across all sectors. So we deal with clients in industrial, office, retail, leisure being one of the probably the hardest hit ones. Got pub owners across the country that have seen massive spikes in their rates, and basically want us to try and help challenge those and mitigate the increases basically. So rates the big one. Obviously any property taxes, there's changes almost every year in terms of the kind of reliefs available and the level of reliefs. So being up to date and up to speed on those and being able to advise businesses as and when they've got questions on those is really important from our point of view. And then the general questions around, if you've got a lease end coming up, what do you do? A lot of businesses, especially kind of owner managed businesses, won't have had experience with that in the past. They'll have a lot of questions and they'll probably want someone to kind of lead them through that process and be as cooperative as they can do. So I'd say they're probably the key ones from our point of view that businesses probably want to look out for.
I think when we're chatting to clients, a lot of the questions around the leases, and a lot of what we will probably notice as well, is they don't know what they don't know, and therefore they'll seek the legal advice, but not actually the property specialist advice of going, actually, is this lease very good?
Yeah.
Am I being stuck on a line here? Should I want to exit and give my 6 months notice, etc.? And more so now, having awareness of the property service line and things, that's more regular than not.
Yeah.
That the clients will just, not all clients, but majority of clients will just look at a lease and go, yeah, that seems reasonable, that seems fine. The solicitors, depending on who they are, will just accept them, probably challenge them a little bit, but also they just enter into it thinking they've done the right thing, but not actually looking at the wider picture as to when that comes to an end.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, a business owner is usually going to go to two places when they've got an issue. It's going to be their lawyer or their accountant. We're well positioned in TC Group where we obviously act as their accountant, so one of the two places they come to will probably come through us anyway. But I mean, look, we've got business owners that like to think they're commercially minded, and obviously the majority of them are very commercially minded, but there'll be certain areas of expertise where they won't have experience in, and that's obviously where we can add value. So if it comes down to, is this the right price I'm paying for this industrial building that I want to relocate to? Is this these the right lease terms that I should be agreeing to? Is there any kind of market evidence or kind of comparables we can compare it against? A business owner is just not going to have that information. So that's where we can add value. That's where we can obviously offer advice and ensure that they get the best commercial decisions for their business going forward. So that's where we like to think we can come in and obviously support business through from whether it's a transactional looking to just acquire something or a bit more of a hands-on management over a number of years.
No, that's good. Bit about you then. So what do you like most about your role, especially within sort of TC Group as well?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing will be the people.
Yeah.
We've got a really, really good team broadly in TC Group, but yes, specifically my team in the property. We're quite a cooperative and kind of cohesive business, so we like to think we're all aiming for the same targets and working towards those. So even though we're quite a big business now, and I've been here 8 years, which is absolutely flown by. From when I left university, did my placement 8-9 years ago, came back, and then I've kind of moved up the hierarchy of the business throughout that period, and eventually became associate director last year. So which has flown by. I think it's been a really good place to work. Great people. We've got really good clients. A lot of really kind of commercial entrepreneurial clients that make every day slightly different. The different projects we work on. Obviously, we offer a lot of services in terms of commercial property, so you're not necessarily doing the same thing every single day, which is a big bonus for me.
Which is great. I suppose then finally, anyone who's listening, what advice would you give to them if they wanted to start out?
I'd say advice to get into it. There's plenty of different routes. If you're kind of starting out, you've just left college and you're interested in getting involved, apprenticeships can be just as good as going to university. So there's a couple of different routes now that you can become a chartered surveyor, either through an apprenticeship or through a university degree. So in terms of like early stages of career, it's definitely something open to all, I'd say. If let's say you're looking to get into commercial property as an investor or someone that wants to do more kind of transactional stuff, then I think just getting the right advice early on is probably what I'd say, which is kind of open-ended and is an easy answer, but there's a lot of pitfalls in commercial property law. And if you're not well advised and you don't take the right kind of advice at the right time, yeah, it's quite easy to kind of succumb to those. So I'd say, yeah, getting advice early, getting the right advice early, and yeah, making sensible commercial decisions should put you in good stead, basically.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
And thanks for listening.